I was listening to an interview with on Steve Bannon's show, The War Room, on Real America's Voice, and he had Marjorie Taylor Greene on the show, and she said quite a few things, some relating to the Iran-Israel war, Ukraine, and the big beautiful bill. But what I focused in on was her point of view as a mother and talking about the goals and dreams that she has for her kids who are from early 20s to late 20s in age. I think there's 3 of them. She also mentioned at the end of that interview that she had an interview with Tucker Carlson, and it had just gotten released that day. So I kept it in mind when I was in front of the TV yesterday, and I looked at it, and she repeated some of those things. So we'll take a look at what she had to say with Tucker, and then we'll get Tucker's response to it, and we'll move into some other things and close out. But let's check out, starting off with what she had to say.
Like you and I were speaking before, our kids' generations. My kids are 22, 25, and 27. And our children's generation, they can't afford rent. They can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford insurance. They can't buy a new car. They can't find a good paying job. They're living month to month, paycheck to paycheck, credit card bills stacked up. And they literally look to the future going, how am I ever going to realize the American dream? And it seems hopeless for them.
Man, I identify with that. I'm the former stepfather of a couple of girls who are in that age bracket, and I said in a previous video, I really wonder how they're making out. I'm not going to call, but I wonder about people in that age bracket. Are they ever going to be able to afford a house? Can they afford a place on their own today? Are they not having to live with their mom or dad? And they should be able to. When I was 24 and 28 years old, I was able to do that. I remember before I graduated, I interned at Alcoa. And the engineers I worked with, they said they had, from the same university, NC State, I believe one guy said he had 9 interviews and he got like 6 job offers. Electrical engineering degree, just like I was working on. Another guy I worked with, I think is the same thing, maybe 7 interviews and 5 job offers. Well, I didn't stop with the bachelor's degree. I went and got a master's degree, and I might have had 11 interviews or something or more, and only got 2 offers. And only one was in North Carolina. That just happened to be with IBM. So I took that role. It's the same amount of money for some other role with International Paper in Texarkana, Texas, but I 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. I chose North Carolina because I wanted to live in North Carolina, Virginia, or Maryland at the time. But I had some options. I could see that they were going down. Like I said, one guy, 9 interviews, 6 job offers. Another guy that graduated after him, like 7 interviews, 5 offers. For me, it felt like at least 11 interviews, but I got 2. And I just see this junk that we're going through. Let's look at what Tucker said.
One of my children just graduated college. I was talking to her this morning over coffee. She's got 13 friends she's moving to a major American city with. And I know them all. I know them, for her 4 years in college. Great people. 3 have jobs.
3.
Yeah,
out of
3
13.
out of 13. And it's not, it's like a real college.
Yeah.
Pretty good college and pretty smart kids. Hard to get into for sure. 3 out of 13. And most of them are from, well-to-do family. They'll be fine. They're not going to starve to death or anything, but
right.
That's not good.
No.
Yeah, it's not good. And I have a big problem with that. I think part of it comes from a few articles I want to share with you. Let's take a look at this one. I heard from someone that about 70% of the people working in tech in Silicon Valley were foreign born. And I said, that can't be right. That sounds kind of high. Sure enough, I looked it up. Here we are in the East Bay Times, which I imagine is somewhere in Silicon Valley in the San Francisco Bay Area. H-1B, nearly 3/4 of Silicon Valley tech workers foreign born, report says. What gets me is this was in January of 2018. Yeah, January 2018. So that was almost 7.5 years ago. I wonder what it's like today. I told you where I currently work. At least in the line of business that I'm in, it's got to be 50% foreign born. And what kills me is the first sentence of this article. Immigrants are wrecking America, some say. But new data suggests that Silicon Valley would be lost without them. Lost without them, really. And that brings me to this. This right here, ladies and gentlemen, is a snapshot of a mutual fund called SWPPX. It is the Schwab version of the S&P 500 index fund. So let's take a look at that. Here are the top 10 holdings. And isn't it interesting that the top 10, just 10 companies, or at least holdings, there's really 9 companies because you see Alphabet here twice. But the top 10 holdings represent 35.5% of the entire S&P 500. This is an order of market valuation. This is weighted by market valuation. So Microsoft is about 7%, 6.75% of the S&P. But let's go down this list. You got Microsoft that was started by whom? Started by Paul G. Allen and William Gates, Bill Gates, 2 American citizens. NVIDIA, started by the son of some Taiwanese immigrants. At least he was one of the founders. He's the current CEO. Apple, started by a couple guys named Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, and I believe one other guy who sold out early. Amazon, famously started by Jeff Bezos. American citizen, same thing with Apple. Meta, started by Mark Zuckerberg and other folks. They're in college. Zuckerberg's a citizen. I don't know the background story of Broadcom. I believe they have some affiliation with the 3M Corporation. But let's move on. Alphabet, that's Google. That is started by students, foreign exchange students. Tesla, started by famously Elon Musk, who is an immigrant. Berkshire Hathaway, that's Charlie Munger, and Warren Buffett. Citizens. So back to this article. Silicon Valley would be lost without these folks. Well, if citizens can start most of the S&P top 10 holdings, why can't it be maintained by citizens? I found out recently that even though Microsoft is laying off a bunch of people, they're still requesting about 10,000 more H-1B folks this quarter. And most of these companies are trillion-dollar valued or greater. I know for sure Berkshire Hathaway is. I was looking at a YouTube video of a YouTuber named The Company Man, and he had a video called Berkshire Hathaway, Bigger Than You Know, and talked about them being valued at $1 trillion. In fact, their Class A shares, just not that long ago, one of their Class A shares was $100,000. Today, it's almost 8 times that. It's almost $800,000 for one share of Berkshire Hathaway Class A stock. So they know what they're doing over there. They know how to make money. Alphabet's $1 trillion company. Meta $1 trillion company. Multiple trillion. Amazon, multiple trillion. Apple, multiple trillion. NVIDIA, last I heard, was about close to $3 trillion in market valuation. To give you an idea of how big a number that is, 1 million seconds, just seconds, is 11.5 days. 1 billion seconds is 31.7 years. So if you live to be as old as my grandfather, he was 96 and a half when he passed away. He lived about 3 billion seconds. That's all. 95 years is 3 billion seconds. 95, 96, he was 96 and a half, about 3 billion seconds. That's it. Now, a trillion seconds is 31,700 years. 31,700 years is a trillion seconds. So if you just spent $1 every second, it would take you 31,700 years to spend it. 1 trillion. And these companies are worth multiple trillions. And they can't survive unless they got rid of some Americans and hired H-1B folks, because Americans can't do the job. We need to have these foreign people because we're smart enough to help them start and run the company, but we're not smart enough to help them sustain the company. Now, I don't believe that's true. It's even gotten so that they want to cut off some of their DEI programs. And I understand what you're saying. Oh, a black guy talking about DEI. It's probably not what you think. I was surprised to see this headline. Check this out. Black Enterprise magazine says 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, September 26, 2023, black people only comprise 4% of DEI positions in the workplace. Maybe not 4% of all the jobs, but 4% of the DEI jobs. You know, the chief diversity officer, anything that has to do with diversity hiring, the process. They only represent about 4% of that. The rest are a lot of liberal women and LGBTQ people. And other typical HR folks, which tend to be Caucasian women and men. What's interesting, the blue collar section, though, is you see Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said, thanks to the President of the United States, his pro-growth policies, his America First policies, real wages for hourly workers are up nearly 2% in the first 5 months of his second term, the strongest growth in 60 years. No president has done that before except President Trump in his first term. Hardworking Americans and Main Street businesses have never had a stronger ally in the White House, which this chart talks about. The first 5 months of a new president. Everybody's down. First 5 months of Nixon, down. First 5 months of Carter, amazingly flat. Reagan, down. H.W. Bush, down. First 5 months. Clinton, down. G.W. Bush, down. Obama, down. Trump, up. Biden, down the first 5 months. Trump, up higher than anybody the first 5 months. Well, that's great for blue-collar jobs. Let's get it going on with white-collar jobs. I think they all should be higher. I think the blue-collar, the truck driver, the construction worker, they should be solid middle-class jobs, solid middle-class producing jobs for people, because those are the people that help build the country. As I mentioned before, you remember that picture, that famous picture where you have a lot of men just sitting on a beam. I don't know how many stories up in the air in what looks like either Chicago or New York City, and they're eating lunch. And I recently saw a photo of the man who took that picture. These people have the right stuff. They all appear to be Caucasian immigrant men who helped build this country. These people who are in the top 10, a lot of them have their names at the tops of buildings or stadiums. How did those stadiums get built? Usually tax subsidies, some sort of tax incentive. If you live in a major metro area, you probably get a little upset when they want to build a new stadium and have taxpayer dollars help subsidize this, so they can be gladiators, especially football stadiums. They only have 8 or 9 home games out of the whole year, but they got to spend $1 billion plus and have most of it paid for by the taxpayer, the middle class. When the owner of the company, the owner of the team, should be able to finance that on their own, especially out here in the Dallas area. Jerry Jones is in real estate. He should You should know how to broker that deal and find other investors, but no, they got to reach for the taxpayer to help pay for that. Well, if we're helping to pay for that, then doggone it, help us build a country where you can sustain, where the country can help sustain the middle class. We don't have that right now. Fortunately, I'm at the end of my chasing of the dollar bill. There's a few more I need to catch and then have them work for me, assuming the future is going to be at least a little bit like the past, but who knows? It's crazy how much it costs for 1 ounce of gold, which, by the way, I'm learning an ounce of gold today buys nothing different than an ounce of gold 200 years ago. It just costs more to buy that ounce of gold, but you get the same thing. In ancient Rome, an ounce of gold would get you a nice robe, custom belt, some nice sandals. Today, an ounce of gold will get you a nice custom-made suit, really nice belt, and some really nice shoes. Same ounce of gold, but it costs $3,400 for that 1 ounce today. We really need at least a $500 bill, but nobody wants to do that because we can't even have the $20 bill not be counterfeited, or especially the $100 bills. No one wants to take a bill that large and risk it being counterfeit. So everything is this central bank digital currency, and then they know what you're spending on everything. When was the last time you bought something in cash? People get a cup of coffee, they're using their card for it. What happens when some bank or government decides you've had enough coffee today? You hit your coffee ration, no more coffee for you for a few days. And they just turn off that ability. You say it can't happen? Really? What happened during the last 5 years? I've learned of several people who got debanked. They debanked the Trumps, which is why the Trump family is suing some banks today. I know they debanked Mike Lindell. They could do it to people like myself, which is why I have relationships with multiple banks, but still, it can happen. And they can stop your ability from accessing it. I think they did that to Kanye West. He just locked up his money. He had trouble accessing it. Well, he's not starving, but still, it's his money. They don't like some things that he said. Can't access it anymore. We control your access to your own accounts. There was a time where I couldn't log into an account unless I could still spend the money, but I couldn't log in until I answered some questions I didn't want to answer. I don't think my bank should know the answers to these questions. I think some of them had to do with what my current salary was. I'm like, why do you need to know that? I eased up a little bit when I found out, though, that 80% or more of what banks do is regulated by the federal government. So we got to change that. But anyway, that's what I wanted to share. Marjorie Taylor Greene has kids in their 20s, and they have some of the concerns I've been bringing up on this channel. Tucker Carlson mentions the same thing. Daughter just graduated, 13 friends, and only 3 of them have jobs. We've had about 20 years of inflation in the past 5 years. I heard a YouTuber say that yesterday, and I thought, that sounds about right. About 20 years of inflation in the past 5 years. That's not sustainable. And I'm hoping we'll get a chance to level set, but let me know what you think about that. Is 70% of people in tech in Silicon Valley, are you comfortable with that number? Because that was 7 years ago, that stat. I'm not comfortable with it because I don't think any other country would do that. I don't think they would allow Americans to, in India, in their information centers, allow 70% of us in the U.S. to take over their workers in the tech field or any field, medicine, law, finance. I don't think they would allow that. But we're doing that here. I don't think they would allow it in the Philippines. They wouldn't allow it in Germany. They would not allow it in France. They wouldn't allow it in Russia. Definitely wouldn't allow it in China. Forget it. Forget it. But we're allowing that here. I think we're doing stupid stuff. I wish we didn't do stupid stuff. And anyway, that's all I have for today on this particular video. Good chatting with y'all. See you next time. Bye-bye.